Yeah, good morning, everybody, to this session on the water sector. My name is Andreas Fulvock. I'm working at the Climate Service Center Germany, which is part of the Helmholtz Center Herion in Hamburg, for the Climate Europe 2 project, and I'm in charge on the market development in more detail. But today we are focusing here on the water sector, and I just sharing the screen for a minute here as a brief introduction uh, to this session. So, water is an essential thing on our planet. Without water, we wouldn't exist. So, water is essential for life, and but water can also be a threat, and in particular to with respect to climate change. And it's, I think, quite a tricky um, element in terms of um, from a perspective of a meteorologist, because if we're talking about water, we are talking in more detail about precipitation. And precipitation is a very interesting parameter, and it's much more difficult to predict and to assess than, for instance, temperature, which we are all talking about if we talk about climate change. So we are talking about changes in annual mean temperature or temperature throughout the annual cycle or whatever, or on extremes and so on. And but water is the second important parameter, and it's has a much higher variability in spatial and temporal scales, and it affects us at least it's the same in the same manner than the temperature. Because if we are short of water, do not have enough water, then it affects, of course, agriculture, but also our supply with water, drinking water, and so on. And on the other hand, we get too much water uh, through extreme precipitation or through rising of sea level. And so we have to protect and to adapt to these changes that we get too much water. So we have floodings, and all this is very difficult to predict, and it happens on small scales, on small spatial scales, but as well as on small temporal scales. And this is a challenge for climate services that address the water. And today we want to talk about these different aspects of water and climate services for water in this session. And I have a number of distinguished speakers today that will, first of all, present a little bit what their climate service, their targeting is all about. And we will here see these different aspects of water, climate services for water in the beginning. So to start with, we'll hear about the operational C3S water service by Spyros Paparissos. I'm not sure I spelled this correctly, from Wageningen. So thank you, Spiros, for joining us today. Then we will have a short presentation from Antonia Mattis from Climate Kick, but she is also not only involved in the Climate Europe 2 project, but she is here today to tell us more about the PCP WISE project, and in particular here, the topic is on co-production of climate services for water, which is also an overarching topic of this Webstable. Then we go into adaptation for flooding, flood adapt, empowering communities to understand flood impacts and solutions. This is introduced by Gundula Winter from Delta Res. Welcome, Gundula, to this session. And finally, joining us a little bit later because he has other commitments ongoing, we will hear about intelligent flood protection through precise forecasts in real time, including issues on AI, which you might heard about yesterday, where we had a specific session on AI, also an overarching topic for this festival. And here we have Gregor Jonen, who is the head of research and development of the Floodwave company, a German company that is doing high resolution flood modeling. And he will tell us about those details. So after these four talks, which we will hear now in a minute, uh, then we will have a discussion on different aspects, on the co-production, on the use of AI, on standardization, and you as participants are very welcome to raise your hand or you put your question in the chat. Um, this session is recorded, so if you don't want to appear, please keep your cameras off. Um, uh, Otherwise, if you want to talk, you are also invited to put your camera on and ask your question if you like from the floor. So with that, I would then first of all invite Spyros, who is a hydroclimatologist and assistant professor at Wageningen Research. And he is focusing on the co-creation of water and climate information services. He will present us today the operational C3S water service. And with that, I've stopped my screen sharing here and would hand over to Spyros for his presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, Andreas. Good morning, everybody. I am trying to share my screen. Can you see the right window?
Yes, it's looking very good. Thank you.
Yeah, great. I can begin?
Yes,
Yeah,
you can start.
yeah. So I would give you an overview of the Copernicus climate change services and specifically the water sector service, C3S water service. What is the water service about? It's about what are the current conditions, what will happen over the next 6 months, and what does the future hold. Specifically, we are doing operational hydrological modeling. We're dealing with seasonal hydrological forecasts and with hydrological climate change projections in the contract. Who is delivering the service? The C3S water contract is defined into three lots. It's a project that runs from February 2025 to January 2028. Lot 1 concerns historical and seasonal forecast to seasonal forecasts and is led by UFZ. Lot 2 is about climate projections led by SMHI, and Lot 3 concerns the user elements, is led by UKCH. And in all of these lots, subcontractors are Wageningen University and Research and Utrecht University, and all the partners participate with a smaller or larger role in all of the lots. So there's a lot of cross-lot collaboration, let's
Spiros,
say.
could you just remind us, you do this back the slide, perhaps not everybody is familiar with these abbreviations of UFZ, SMHI, and so on. You
Yeah,
just tell us
you're right. The UFZ is SMHI is the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute. UKCH is the UK Center for Ecology and Hydrology in the UK. UFZ is the Center for Environmental Research in Germany. And then we have Wageningen University and Research, where I come from, the Netherlands, and Utrecht University, also the Netherlands. These are 5 core partners, and we are all subcontracted or main contracted by ECMWF, the European Union Mesoscale Weather Forecast Agency, operate within the scope of the Copernicus Climate Change C3S services. Now, talking about user, let's say, perspective, the user requirements at this contract is at the heart of the service. what we are doing is we are trying to map and identify stakeholders that they're supposed to use the water sector outputs. We are trying to define user-led indicators, water indicators of future change. We're trying to assess the current gaps in terms of what kind of variables and water indicators are needed, are missing, and what are the needs. We are, of course, running our models and do a lot of technical data and quality assurance. We assess guidance and try to develop documentation in order to support users that they are not experts necessarily with using water information. And we're also seeing the needs for projection, what kind of temporal and spatial scale we want the users want information, what type of scenarios, and how they would like to receive them. In a nutshell, I'm not going to go through all of this presentation. We are running our models that we have in our respective groups. For example, my group at Wageningen University, we're having the VIC-VUR model, we're having the HYPE, the PCR Globe from Utrecht, the Leesflats from UFZ. We are having some output water, hydrological variables concerning evapotranspiration, snow, soil moisture, river discharge, and we are doing so we can assess the hydrological status, we can see the hydrological projections and climate and water impact indicators. We are doing 6 months forecasts, and we are doing it at a very fine scale. We go down to 5 kilometers. We upload our data on the Climate Data Store, CDS. This data, we are trying to develop some interactive, we are developing some interactive web application in order for users with no technical background to explore and access the data. And we are developing some associated material to support decisions, for example, and we're collaborating with a lot of partners, a lot of stakeholders like the European Investment Bank, the European Environmental Agency, the national contact points from each countries, the World Meteorological Organization. We do that in order to receive feedback, in order to shape the future contracts from ECMWF that they're supposed to come. An example of applications here with some sample data from 2018 is we are running our models in the background, we produce our hydrological variables and indicators, and we are developing this forecast app. It's very similar to the Copernicus Climate Change Climate Atlas, where you can select your forecast variable, you can select the aggregation that you want, and your lead time, and for each desired location around the world, you can have an overview of the variable that you want, that you requested. So that's one thing, visualizing data, but what kind of data are there? As we said, we have a very strong user component in the service. So we are very strongly assess the user needs, what is needed, what spatial and temporal scales, what type of indicators, because our models produce water variables, specific variables. So how do we turn these into indicators? What is useful for users? We also developing a strong user guidance. Data and variables alone say nothing to those that they're unable to use them. They don't have the technical expertise or background. So we are trying, for example, for technical users to show the details from the modeling framework, or for non-technical users, the source of the data, the skill or the accuracy of the data, how the data look like. We do that with the interactive data app that I showed you before, for a certain country or basin or region. And at the same time, we are also working on dedicated user cases so we can show the value in practice. How can the water service support users and sectors in specific areas and countries? What it looks like, the support from the users, as I said, we do have material for very expert users to non-experts. For example, we have example graphics that's showing model setup and facts. It's explaining the forecast variables, how these are derived from the model, how these are aggregated, how these are presented with temporal and spatial scale. We also have a detailed technical manual, but at the same time, we're developing some Jupyter notebooks and codes to demonstrate how to work with C3S data. We are developing some video explanations of the forecast and how the models are set up for those that they are interested to find out what is happening in the backend. But also, we are developing some video tutorials for users how to use the web applications, which very much concerns the front end and especially intended for users with no climate or water background whatsoever. As we said, we're also working in specific use cases in order to prove the value of the water data from the water service. We are using seasonal or up to climate change adaptation scale to show impact of a certain area or water basin. We're doing that in the European and the global scale with our models, and we're also doing it across sectors. So we, of course, we are a service that relates with the water sector, but we are also dealing with water resources management, the link with water and agriculture, hydropower investment, and we do that in coordination with multiple other C3S services, for example, for the European Environmental Agency, the European Investment Bank, and of course the national collaboration programs. We contribute to many ongoing activities, and we also searching for more users and use cases that we haven't identified yet, and they can benefit from the power and the potential of the data and the variables that the water sector derives. We're also testing the functionality of the visualization of the tools that we are developing, from the base map layers to how we can make it light or simplified for users that they are using it and they don't necessarily want to have high computational power. We receive a lot of feedback in order to go back to the drawing table and work again with our data. And finally, what my takeaway message is that we're not trying to replace the national local data and tools. We're focusing on large-scale transboundary international basins. We want to show the added benefit and a broader overview of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, the water sector. We are collecting user requests for specific climate and water and impact indicators, and we consider them what we can further add. We are trying to co-design, as I showed you, the applications to suit specific user needs, and we are having demonstrations to how the C3S water service data and tools can be applied in practice. And overall, we're trying to develop a network of people and organizations that create climate services for water. And if you want to get involved, you can scan and take part on the ongoing survey where we collect the user needs in relation to the water sector that could shape the future of the C3S water contract. Thank you. I think I was on time.
Thank you very much, Sparus, for this overview on the C3S water service. And just a quick question that came in up to my mind. Could you say out of your head how many active users you have, and what are the major customers?
About the active users, I cannot give you a specific number because it concerns statistics of the C3S. I assume that there would be a couple of thousands because C3S is a quality assured and authoritative, let's say, portal where people download data. The second question was about the users. Yeah, that's quite interesting. What we're trying to do is in another context, but we're also implementing into that. There's when it comes to climate services, we can discuss it afterwards. There's no one size that fits all. So we're trying to develop some user personas. What are people that they will be using this data? And this could be vary from scientists, uh, climatologists to policymakers, to municipal or prefecture leaders, to media, and all these people require different type of information in order to use them to underpin their work.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other immediate question? If not, I would like to thank you again, Spiros. We will discuss later on, and then move to Antonia Mattis from Climate Kick. Antonia will today focus on not on Climate Europe 2, well, but on
Mhm.
the PCP-WISE project. And this is in particular about co-production of climate services for the water sector. And please, Antonia, give us a little bit background what PCP-WISE is all about and where are the strength of this European project, I guess it is. So tell us a little bit more about that. You want to share, or I should? Yeah, you want to share.
Yes, I will share. I've made some small changes to the
Yeah,
PowerPoint.
okay, that's fine.
Just one second where I'll find the right one. This should be it. And then let me go into presentation mode.
Perfect.
Does that look okay?
Yeah, with this, yeah, no, it's fine.
Great. Okay, I don't see you anymore. So if there's any questions or anything is not clear, please just interrupt me. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Antonia Mattis. I, as Andreas said, also work in Climate Europe too, but um, since over a year and a half, I've been mainly working actually in this PCP WISE project. Um, Climate Kick, the company that I work for, leads a work package in this project about the climate relevance of the to be procured solution. And so we've been very much involved with engaging end users and making sure that what is procured under PCP WISE is also hitting the project's stated goals of supporting climate adaptation and strengthening resilience to climate change in Europe. But before I go into that too much, let me do a brief introduction of PCP WISE. Um, I also have an in a nutshell slide, so that's funny. PCP WISE is a Horizon Europe funded project that is designed to co-develop pre-commercial solutions. And those solutions should use space and Earth observation data to tackle the water and climate related challenges that we identify in our buyer areas. So this project has a funding of 19 million euros. It brings together 12 public buyers and then 14 support organizations across Europe. And the aim is to procure scalable digital solutions that would enhance the resilience to floods, droughts, and similar climate induced water risks in Europe and perhaps also beyond Europe in the future. This project builds on groundwork that was laid by the Protect CSA project. Just to give you a brief overview of what a pre-commercial procurement process looks like. Apologies if this slide is a little bit confusing. I won't go through every single step. The most important thing to know is that the sought after climate service that would be procured here does not exist yet. So we're trying to really trigger innovation and create something that does not exist yet, but does fill an important market gap. So PCP, pre-commercial procurement, enables public buyers to share the risks and benefits with the suppliers as they co-developed. So buyers and suppliers together co-develop solutions in a competitive R&D process over these three phases that you see on the screen here, where the solution would eventually reach TRL 8. For the suppliers, this means access to funding, to pilot opportunities for real world testing, and to collaborate directly with potential future buyers of their solution. So a pre-commercial procurement is really a unique opportunity for suppliers to co-create in close collaboration with end users, so with the public buyers. And as I said, to also test and validate in real world conditions and to stand out in quite a competitive market. So this approach would provide the suppliers with a clear path to market and to make sure that the climate services that are developed are effective and commercially viable. All right, but now on to the main topic for today, which is how does the co-production of climate services in PCP WISE actually look? So I would like to introduce first the PCP-WISE challenge and the 5 use cases that we are tackling. So PCP-WISE focuses on what we call in the project the soil, water, vegetation system, or here it even includes the soil, water, vegetation, atmosphere system. So it is really about this interplay between natural systems that are increasingly stressed by climate impacts. In the project, we aim to improve decision-making tools and early warning systems that public authorities are using when responding to water-related crises. So the public buyers that we have in the project, these 12 public buyers I mentioned before, they face very complex water-related issues, such as floods, droughts, wildfires, subsidence, and then all of that is kind of exacerbated by data being unavailable or only available in silos, and also gaps that they have in their predictive capability. So the buyers in PCP-WISE, based on these situations that they are in, have defined 5 use cases that are each focusing on specific issues and geographical areas. So use case 1 is focused on urban drought issues in Northwestern Europe. It deals with water distribution problems in cities due to various human and also external factors. And this use case aims to mitigate water shortage that is impacting infrastructure and living conditions in those cities. Use case 2 addresses urban water excess, so the opposite, in Eastern and Northern Europe, where the overabundance of water affects city infrastructure. So it is kind of what Andreas said at the beginning of this session, that too much water or too little water are both kind of a factor in this risk. This use case 2 also focuses on managing water storage and infiltration issues that are exacerbated by regional factors like sea level rise, for example. Use case 3 tackles then on the rural level the issue of drought in Northeastern Europe, where extreme climate variations are impacting agriculture and nature, leading to issues like wildfires and losses in agricultural production. Use case 4 deals with rural drought and flooding in Southern Europe, where structural drought periods and intense rainfall, so both extremes, affect agricultural processes and cause significant production challenges for agriculture. And use case 5 focuses on rural drought and flooding in Northeastern Europe, addressing problems that are caused by extreme groundwater conditions that impact land use and infrastructure. So this use case aims to manage soil moisture conditions to prevent issues like organic oxidation and underground peat fires. So PCP-WISE seeks to address these issues through interoperable and data-driven solutions that are rooted in real operational needs. So to understand those needs, we had to also understand who are the end users of PCP-WISE. And in the project, we have identified these 3 categories that you can see on the screen here. Importantly, these are not mutually exclusive, and we know that people who are perhaps working as regular water managers might move into, for example, the crisis category if there is a threat to water quality or quantity. Each of these categories has different needs in terms of the temporal and spatial scales of the data, as well as how the data is visualized, because they all come at it with different backgrounds. So we have these 3 categories: crisis, regular, and climate. As you can see here, I just put some details of how these categories of end users affect the kind of needs that they have. Those working in crisis management would need hourly updates or sometimes even half-hourly updates to be able to respond. The data needs to be at a very high resolution, and it needs to be at a regional or local or also hyper-local scale to be able to tackle the issue exactly where it is happening. And the goal or the aim for this group, or what they really need from PCP-WISE, is for their early warning systems to be improved, to be able to better react to and prepare for risks. Then we have the regular water managers. They need mostly daily updates on water quality and quantity. Their scale of data would probably be the management area that they are responsible for. And what they need is to be able to identify risks to water supply early. For example, if there is a drought in the surrounding area that could affect water quantity in the future. Then the climate category they are interested in longer timescales. They would be running climate scenarios, for example. They would probably be interested in the governance scale, often actually also on the national scale. And what they need is to make data-backed climate adaptation decisions that they feel confident in. So co-production is really central to a pre-commercial procurement process, as I have already mentioned. The process is really rooted in co-creation. We build on expressed user needs, and the evaluations at the end of each phase are also going to check how well the solutions will address those needs. Last summer, we at Climate Kick held 5 end-user workshops at the 5 lead use case sites. And at these workshops, we collected end-user requirements for the service. And these requirements then fed directly into the PCP-wise tender, so they really form the foundation of what is to be procured. And we will be at Climate Kick throughout the duration of the project, creating additional moments for this co-creation, both virtual and in person, to make sure that this dialogue continues. So the end users can expect, and I see I might already be at 10 minutes, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Apologies. As I mentioned before, what they can expect out of PCP-wise includes enhanced decision-making, better tools for this decision-making. So it is also really important that we develop user-friendly dashboards and that the information is tailored to local needs. That includes things like being able to display the information in the local language, and also not assuming that each end user has the technical skills to engage directly with data, but it has to be visualized and packaged in a way that even someone without a technical or background in hydrology, for example, can understand what the data is saying. Crisis management should become more proactive with this better information. Of course, a core outcome of PCP is always that the solution would be innovative. And finally, what we want is to enhance resilience to these water-related crises. So right now, phase 1 of this PCP process has started, and we have selected 5 supplier consortia from across Europe who are now going to be developing a kind of blueprint of their solution design until the end of phase 1. And important part of this blueprint is the end user facing component of the climate service. So that can be a dashboard or a data viewer. The end user's needs are really the key element for evaluating the solutions at the end of phase 1, where we will then see who gets to proceed to phase 2. All right. I think that is it for me. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Antonia. That's another very interesting facet of the water sector that we are touching on here. Immediately, I asked myself, you always talked about end users and end users in rural areas. Who are those here you're tackling in for cities? It's clear to me, but for rural areas, is this an individual farmer or who are your?
There are, yes, we have farmer organizations as part of the end user community. We also have, for example, local firefighter groups. I'm not sure what the exact term there is, because we are tackling both the excess of water and then also the lack of water. So we also have, for example, in Germany, the THW, Technisches Hilfswerk. It's a kind of crisis response organization in Germany who tackle these extreme events. They respond to floods, for example, but they also respond to fires and other hazards. Also, the Bavarian Red Cross is part of the end user group. And we will also be running a kind of simulation tabletop exercise with these end users to see towards the end then of phase 3, when there is a kind of workable beta version of the climate services available, for them to play through it a little bit and see how well the solution tackles their needs. And for that, we would bring together people from both the rural and urban scale.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other
Thank you.
immediate question? If not, we'd like to move on to our third speaker, Gundula Winter. She's a senior advisor and researcher on coastal risk assessments and adaptation and at DeltaRes. And she will today present us the Flood Adapt project or a Flood Adapt service. That was also in focus last year in Climate Europe 2 as a specific case study. And I'm very grateful that Gundula could provide us with a deeper insight in how Flood Adapt is working and what the specific characteristics of that service are. So, Gundula, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your introduction, Andreas. And thank you everyone for joining and listening in on this session. I also have, so I hope everyone can see that now without any blockages.
That's fine.
All right, great, thank you. So flooding is an enormous problem and one of the costliest natural hazards. Rising sea levels and in some parts of the world, more variable and intense rainfalls will only worsen flooding in the future. Many communities in the world need to invest more in adaptation, but the questions are how much is needed and what options might be most promising. To answer these questions, we have developed Flood Adapt, a tool which was developed to empower communities to better understand their current and future flood risk and, most importantly, to explore suitable adaptation strategies. In this presentation, I want to show the purpose behind Flood Adapt, demonstrate some of its functionalities in the form of a use case, and finish with an overview of what it can do. So flooding can be caused by different flood hazards, such as rainfall, high river discharges, coastal storm surges, and high tides, or any combination of these, so compound events. In the future, a flood risk will evolve due to physical factors such as sea level rise, changes in storminess and rainfall patterns, but also socioeconomic changes in population and economy. And there are many options to reduce flood risk, such as dikes, flood walls, pumps, and green infrastructure, which all reduce the hazard, or flood-proofing, buyouts, and home elevations to reduce exposure and vulnerability. So this escalates potentially the number of scenarios the users might want to simulate to assess and compare different adaptation strategies across multiple future scenarios. Hence, we thought it would require a tool that is fast and easy to use. And in response to this need, we developed Flood Adapt. So we found that communities have questions such as how long will our adaptation strategy based on dikes and pumps be effective? Or what if population growth doubles in our city? Or how is risk distributed across different groups in society to ensure that flood risk mitigation is also equitable? The Flood Adapt interface helps users to translate these questions into scenarios to simulate. Each scenario consists of a future condition, such as sea level rise or population growth, a flood event, which can be any combination of rainfall, surge, tide, and river discharges, and an adaptation strategy that describes either a do-nothing approach or one or multiple adaptation measures. Under the hood, Flood Adapt uses the super fast process-based flood model Sphinx and the flood damage model Delft Fiat. And it automatically translates all the scenario inputs of the user into updated model schematizations. So it's using Sphinx, a validated physics-based model, and on the flood damage side, Delft Fiat. And then the model results are post-processed into meaningful outputs, which include flood maps, damage and risk maps, impact metrics, infographics, equity-weighted risks, and benefits. And they can also be exported into GIS-ready formats, so users can use them in any GIS platform that they're comfortable with. So by now we have set up Flood Adapt applications in many places around the world and in very different flooding contexts. In this presentation, I would like to highlight a use case here in Europe, in Denmark, where we work with the Danish Coastal Authority. Together, we developed 2 pilot applications in close collaboration with them, and one of them is in Nyborg, which is situated on the Baltic Sea in the center of Denmark. And this aerial image is facing east towards the Baltic Sea, where most of the damaging storm surges are coming from. Recent storm events include one in 2006, which caused flooding in the harbor area, just like in this photo. So we reran the 2006 event, and this is showing the output from the flood modeling in the FloodAdapt user interface. It caused flooding in the city center along the harbor waterfront. It led to roads being flooded, and one of them is pictured in this photo that I showed of the bus before. And at the same time, that was too fast, buildings along the waterfront were flooded as well. So due to the high flood risk, the municipality is planning to implement a flood wall along the harbor. And questions immediately came up, like, would this have been sufficient in an event like 2006? And will it still be sufficient in the future with sea level rise? So FloodAdapt allows for this interactive modeling where users can implement actions and evaluate their effectiveness. So we added the seawall, which you can see here in the user interface, and reran the 2006 scenario. And now you can see the flooding along the harbor waterfront is gone, so it would have effectively protected the city. There's only a few houses at the southern end, which are outside the flood wall, that would still incur damages. In the next step, we added 23 centimeters of sea level rise, which is projected to be exceeded around 2050 under an SSP3 scenario. Well, it's sometimes jumping too far ahead. So, and the flood wall would still be effective. But FloodAdapt also lets users modify historic or synthetic events to ask questions like, what if rainfall would hit at the same time, because compounding flooding matters? So we modified the 2006 event and added 30 millimeters of cumulative rainfall. So now we also see some flooding in areas inland. For example, this location. So what measures could potentially be taken there? So I want to highlight another group of measures that you can realize in FloodAdapt, which is urban green infrastructure. They are becoming more and more popular, nature-based solutions, due to their multiple co-benefits. And FloodAdapt allows users to implement water storage tanks, retention basins, or greening areas. So we tried a water storage tank for one of the rainfall flooding hotspots, which you can see here. So on the left, you can see the strategy with the flood wall only, and on the right, you can see the flood wall plus the water storage tank, and you can see that the flooding in these local hotspots and the damages would be mitigated. So I want to finish off with an overview what FloodAdapt can do. So it can evaluate sea level rise, population growth, but also increase precipitation or storm frequencies in the future. It can simulate flooding due to combinations of rainfall, surge, tide, wind, and river discharges, and it can do this based on historic events that people are familiar with, or synthetic events, or even probabilistic event sets. And using these probabilistic event sets in FloodAdapt unlocks all its risk and benefit functionalities. It can then calculate for you return period flood maps, return period damages, and risk in terms of expected annual damages. This makes it possible to evaluate the risk reduction potential of strategies that a user is interested in. And for the measures, we're continuously extending the suite of adaptation options. So I think one of our users is summarizing it pretty well. We can examine through flood adapt what to do, where, and what kind of impacts we have on our future and current conditions, and then we can start using it to prioritize our next steps. So this is from one of our users in Key Biscayne in Florida. And at the end, I want to point you towards our website where you can find a whole lot of information about Flood Adapt, the training packages that we're offering around it. You can sign up to our newsletter or just get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Gunilla. Yeah, I have two quick questions, I think. Um, First is who is financing it? Is it long-term sustained funding, or how do you manage to work with your customers?
Yeah, we offer training packages around it, so to make the people familiar with how to use it. And also we see that there are developments that the end user want which are not implemented in Flood Adapt yet, and then we realize those for them. So a continuous co-production process.
Yeah, so it's you're offering that tool, and it has to be applied and used and filled with, say, information and data by the user, right? This.
Yeah, it can be by the user or we can help the user. We also had projects like that where we so it is true, these underlying models, they need a lot of local data to make them locally relevant. I mean, we could, in theory, use global data, but then the results wouldn't be good enough for that scale. And yeah, there we can either do it for users or we can train them in how to do it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this will be quite interesting to learn now from the last talk, the commonalities and differences between the two approaches on flood simulations, and so that's thank you first, Gunilla, again for your presentation, and then I would like to move to Gregor. Gregor Jonen is a civil engineer and is the head of research and development at the Flood Wave company. This is a startup from the RT, what is RT? Always,
RWTH.
always getting puzzled with that in Aachen. And so this is a private endeavor. So so far we had mostly, say, public funded services, but this is a private company that is providing flood projections and information. And I'm really very thankful that Gregor is with us and provide us a view into in the private sector, how you're working, what your specifics of your products are. And I would give you the floor, and please, Gregor, show us what Floodwave is able to do, and AI is in the also already in the name, and this will, I think, play an important role here. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Many thanks, Andreas, for the intro, and very happy to be here. Thanks for having us, and also compliments to the previous talks. They've been really interesting. Yes, Floodwave, we are a startup, RWTH Aachen University spin-off, founded in October 2023. So it's been, yeah, let's say intense years till now. We are now a team already of 24 people. And yeah, I'm leading the research and development activities. So Yes, what problems were we are facing? So the missing layer actually when talking about flood and also how to cope with floods, it's not the missing weather data, it's actually the impact. And what's been used right now for long-term planning are those static hazard maps, which had been calculated with a limited set of historical scenarios, e.g., for example, a flood with a 100-year return period. And the problem is that these maps are not dynamic and they inadequately reflect climate change under current conditions. So the gap is actually the missing foundation for future-proof investment and location decisions. So it's really well connected to what Gundula presented in the previous talk. And then one thing we also cover, but what's also been a problem is the forecasting and warning. So what we are right now very good at is weather forecast. It's also really the qualities enhancing with the new AI weather forecasting models, for example, from ECMWF. And through these new technologies, like LSTMs, but also like process-based hydrological models, we can quite well translate that to take the laser pointer for now, to hydrological forecasts, which of course come with uncertainty, which populates from the weather forecast also to the river water levels. But the missing part is still that we can not, or at least on a very large scale, translate these forecasts to actual impact forecasts. So what does the certain water level or also amount of rainfall mean in terms of flooded areas? What roads are still to be used by the emergency response on the ground? And that we are in this quite static field is mostly to the computational bottleneck. The classical numerical models are just too slow and also too costly or too complicated for using them on a very large scale and under those dynamic conditions like under real-time deployment. So our approach, as Andres already said, is like a fusion of a physics-based model with a deep learning model. So to tell you a little bit more about these, what we actually did is we trained an emulator of a physics-based model, which is now able, to basically calculate very large areas in sometimes under seconds. So we have a very fine resolution as well. And we see it as a kind of breakthrough because it enables really highly precise and physically accurate predictions. So it's like a few best of both worlds approach, which and by having let's say a foundation model, we know that from the field of hydrology, if we train a model on multiple basins, that we can also apply it then to ungorged basins or unseen sites. And that's the same what we now have. We have one model, a foundation model, which can basically be applied at any location depending on the stack of input data. So that's also a nice slide because our model has now two capabilities. The one is the risk analysis, mostly covering also the points which Gundula presented, but also real-time forecasting. So our risk analyzer is there. We put in potential heavy rainfall scenarios, but also potential river floodings, and you can really calculate on-demand risk analytics and also do instant mitigation models. So we are also able to implement flood walls, retention reservoirs, whatever inside the simulation, and the user can then really flexibly also choose to run fine-grained scenario analysis. And the other pillar is that we actually pull live weather predictions from the weather services like German Weather Service, ECMWF globally, but also NOAA. So we just take a bunch of weather predictions and are able to do like impact-based forecasting and actionable warning. Additionally to that, we can, of course, use the generalized foundation model for that, but we can also always fine-tune the data in case there's or the model in case there's models available locally or sensor data. And this is an example how this would look like. So we have a weather forecast, and our model would calculate then instantly over a very large area the flood. This can also handle compound events, so a flood, a river flooding at the same time a heavy rainfall event looks. And this is the kind of validation we usually then also do, is to really assess based on pictures. This is a flood event of Fischbach in June 2024 in Bavaria, to see whether the predictions we made make sense. This is another use case, and also a very prominent one we use frequently. So this is the 2021 R flood event, and this is the Copernicus satellite imagery of the flood extent, and this is our simulation. And we, of course, see it's not a perfect match, because the weather forecast, of course, also came with some uncertainty. But just imagine the value of such a forecast would have given the emergency or disaster response in this case. But it was just not present, because calculating an area of the size of the R Valley is just out of scope for real-time deployment at the moment. And yeah, just to touch also upon our technical coverage, this call it floodway system is basically ready to operate worldwide. We, of course, work with different stack of input data. So, for example, we have higher quality data in Germany, where we have the 1 meter digital elevation model, but also globally we are in talks with Airbus for their world DEM, but also higher resolution global products. And yeah, we have deployed it in some countries other than Germany, of course, which is also Australia, USA, but also especially Spain, and newly also Portugal. Yeah, this is just to give you a view inside our platform. So this is how it looks like when we run a simulation, and then you can access the results basically as also before. And the nice thing is that we can at any point also assess then water levels within the river. And of course, it gives you also here a toolbox where you can right away implement certain measures and then rerun the simulation within seconds, and then access the effectiveness. Yeah, we have also, of course, river velocities, and these are a very, very high resolution. And this is another example we built for the whole federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia here in Germany, that you can really typing in your address, then access the flood risk at your place. So this is something we, of course, also do. It's a little bit dependent also on the contract or what's needed, but there it's handled in a way that users can then retrieve a report, and also this report holds some information on how to best adapt their house for specific flood risks they are facing. Our market traction, you see a little bit our ecosystem, which really ranges from governments and public sector, where we work, of course, with federal states. We have also some district level contracts. We work also, of course, with the TARS in terms right now. It's mostly in the JCAR A-Trace project, but this is very important to of course validate our results on a scientific basis. Yeah, and then there's other sectors like water management, industry and technology, but also, of course, the insurance sector is very interested in those kind of solutions. Yeah, and this is basically the team, the growing team we have working with. So our CEO, this model basically came out of the PhD thesis of Julian, and then Adrian, he kind of professionalized everything, and we are really also aiming at benchmarking our approach with other state-of-the-art models. So it's really physically also sound. Yeah, I would say that's it from my side, and I really look forward to the discussion we have now.
Thank you
Many
very
thanks.
much. Thank you, Gregor. That was very interesting as well. Quick question, just would it be useful or w- wouldn't there is an application for your model be to be integrated in a kind of a warning system if say the German Weather Service issues heavy rain warning that you would then be tasked to run your model and estimate where the high risks of this the warning of this rain warning would be. So you understand what I mean? That you have a can immediately provide not with such a delay as we had in the R Valley, but so have a really detailed warning in a regional warning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, this is the part where it's really on the deep wave forecasting, and we have a system in place. Oh, sorry, the slide has like a timer with the Städteregion Aachen, and this is our most advanced system, I would say. It's of course also due to the synergies we have as we are an Aachen-based company. But here, yeah, we have this really under operation, and it pulls the live weather forecast. And in case there's an event, there's also some pre-alert to everyone involved over the whole region within disaster response. Yeah, so it's just not on a very large scale, but of course, technically it would be possible. And we also envision that we are in talks with the German Weather Service there right now. But yeah, on a state level, it takes some time, so to
Yeah,
speak.
sure. Yeah, well, we've seen this in various examples. The R Valley is one, but also the floodings in Spain. That well, the precipitation alert alone is not enough. So you need more, and you have to reach the people, of course, at a very local scale and a level in very quickly if you want to avoid substantial losses there and damages.
Yes,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, and yeah, perhaps open up a little bit the discussion. Well, one key element here of this web stool is co-production, and I think we would all agree on that co-production is key and central. So you wouldn't have Gregor, no customers if you would not feed the needs of your users, and I think the importance of co-production would not be denied by any of you. So this is something which is key and central. Have you and David any specific problems while co-producing your service, or for instance, Gregor, how much interaction do you have while developing your service? When did it start? How do you? It's coming from the academic side, but when have you really have a close interaction with your users?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Thanks for the question beforehand. So I think like when we really talk about AI or machine learning services, or maybe to start with classical services, stakeholders, I think, can of course co-produce the model. Maybe, for example, in the flood adapt model, They can then also on site, as it's also an open source model, choose the parameters, roughness, or the schematization. This is, of course, co-production, as it was also touched upon. But with like ML service or our deep wave engine, they can really co-produce the weight matrix, for example, of the model. So I think co-production moves to the boundaries of the process. So more to the inputs, thresholds, impact categories, what kind of uncertainty representation or presentation or decision logic they want. So this is the part where we can really co-produce. So for example, in the infra project with the Städteregion Aachen, which I just touched upon, the co-production worked, and it worked on, for example, alert thresholds, the impact layers, but also the dashboard visualization. So the main model, of course, or the internals of the model, so to speak, they stayed expert driven, and yeah, that's I think the honest frontier.
Mm. Yeah. Spiros, your co-production is how does it work? Where you have continuous, or yeah, you developing the products with your users, or in how are you going to do this?
Yes, thank you, Andreas. Co-production, let's first say that it's a buzzword for a lot of people and can interpret it very different ways. Believe me, working on that, and if we had a social scientist in the room, they would have a complete different opinion about what co-production is. But let's make it specific for the water context of the Copernicus. Of course, we have a grant that we had to answer to. So, and there were some specific elements of co-production. For example, we started with a global survey of the user needs, and for data output, we wanted to gauge the interest on the water service outputs, whether people prefer seasonal forecast information or more longer term projections. We then pinpoint down some users that they gave us quite advanced information, and we had more key informant interviews to gather more detail. We also have some use cases where we try to see through the water sector how the water sector can support existing decision making for a range of sectors in spatial scales, or some examples of how the water service from the Copernicus and the data can be used. And eventually, we want to pinpoint down some super users, let's say, when it comes to the app development and the interactive portals. We want to have a small group of interesting parties across sectors and different various technical levels to get a sense of, let's say, the application, functionality, design, whether the data and how these are visualized are the way they want it, and how we can integrate the user guidance, because as we said, the contract is intended for various users, for experts in hydroclimatologists, but also for media and policymakers that they don't really have a complete overview of what is there. So various level of knowledge, specific, tailored tools.
Thank you. As we talk in Climate Europe 2 also about standardization of processes, we are of course discussing just in a working group nowadays. Can we standardize co-production? What would you say? Gunilla, you have an opinion on that?
Can we standardize co-production?
Yeah.
Very good question. I guess it's also the climate services are very different. So we actually started the co-production process before we even started developing our tool. So over the course of 4 years, we worked with our first pilot case, the city of Charleston in South Carolina, having bi-weekly calls, having in-person workshops where we try to understand the user stories, elicit user requirements, collect feedback on the developments that we had through agile development cycles, and then also providing training. And that taught us a lot. How are they using it? Where are the bottlenecks in using them? And the more projects and users we had, the more intelligence we collected on how are the users working with it, what do we need to improve, what's important to them, what should be priorities in the development. But I guess because, yeah, I, I, I can imagine it's hard because also the services presented here, like the C3S service, then Flood Adapt, and also Flood Wave, different users, different user stories, different purpose.
Yeah, what's the common?
Trying to cover all that.
Yeah, we are
in
trying to
one
find the
standardized
common ground for
process.
that.
Yeah.
So that's our task somehow to find a common ground or a baseline. So what should be in such a, say, guideline standard or however you call it, if if it is at all possible. So, and that's why we are also trying to seek for experiences that people made with their co-production processes. I think, as I said in the beginning, you will all agree that a co-production process is useful and needed um, to really develop a good and fit for purpose service. Either you have a custom made individual one, or if you have a product which is, say, a tool that is then applied for different purposes, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps, Antonia, you have the co-production of the title, so is somehow an vital element of your project. Otherwise, it wouldn't work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for pre-commercial procurement, it really is a prerequisite to run it successfully. On the other hand, pre-commercial procurement comes with a lot of rules and guidelines that you have to follow. And importantly, you have to treat all of the selected supplier consortia equally. That means they all need to have equal access to the end user base. And it cannot be that there are any back channel conversations between one of our buyers and one of our suppliers. So even though co-production is so central and we are really trying to prioritize it, the logistics of it are actually incredibly complicated. At the same time as this web civil session today, have actually been running, then my colleagues were there, a kind of virtual roundtable exercise between the suppliers and the end users. And so this had to be 5 Teams meetings running at the same time, where each has a moderator in there, and then the end users stay in the room and the suppliers have to change between the different Teams meetings. And as I can understand it, it was quite a mess and it was quite complicated to set this up, to give everyone the same amount of time, everyone the same treatment, everyone has to get the same chance to ask their questions and to also answer questions. So I think actually the way end user interactions are, or buyer supplier interactions are defined in a pre-commercial procurement is in a way standardized. But we also see that these kind of strict rules can definitely be a hindrance. On the other hand, of course, it is important to treat suppliers equally and fairly, and you don't want to give any unfair advantage to one supplier consortia over another, but it does carry a huge logistical burden, I will say, for everyone involved. I will say also that the suppliers have shown very, very high interest in meeting with the end users and learning from them. And they all, no one said, oh, why do we have to do this? They all said, well, when is this happening? When can I talk to them? So it really shows that they are also focused on co-production, that this is something that is central to how they work, which was very nice for us to see, of course. But yeah, as I said, it can take a lot of time, be very complex to organize, and not every end user can also say, oh yeah, I can dedicate a whole half day to this. They are all people who are already working regular jobs, right? They are water managers, firefighters, whatever that might be. So even getting them to be available for an online event is tricky, let alone in-person events. So I think even if you try your best to center co-production in the development of your service, there will always be barriers, and it's always going to be tricky
Yeah.
to make sure it's fair and equal, and that you even have a diverse group of end users represented, because we often find that it is much easier to engage, let's say, people working in academia or people with a higher technical background, because they feel like, oh yeah, this is clearly for me. I understand everything that is on the agenda for this meeting. But if you try to also engage people who don't have a background, now in our case in hydrology, or who are city planners who are more looking at, okay, where am I going to plant trees? They also need this information, but they might be actually scared off by some of the lingo. So it's a difficult balance to strike. Of course, it's worth it in the end to have a service that actually ends up being used, and it's not another kind of Horizon Europe product dashboard that ends up somewhere on a website that is discontinued after 5 years and no one looks at it again. That is exactly what we want to avoid. But it is a huge organizational burden, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's perhaps, as time is running fast, a little bit wrap up and coming to perhaps perspectives, and we could perhaps combine the question on what role you see AI will play in, say, 5 years' time, or how does your service, you envisage your service in, say, 5 years' time, and perhaps you can include a little bit the question of how AI can help you, but what perhaps also the limitations using this technology that is emerging on a, say, daily basis nowadays, with taking into account that we should to have a trustful, or a service that is the user can trust, and perhaps doesn't look like black boxes. So how you can ensure that your service is even using AI, transparent, reliable, um, and trustful. And of course, I would pass this question first of all to Gregor, who's already using AI quite a lot in the service.
Yeah, as previously said, I think and we also see this in other disciplines, like especially in hydrology, that really the community benchmarks is key. So it's really about formal standards, I would say, at this stage. So, for example, in hydrology, we all know this CAMELS data set, large sample hydrology data sets, which are the template. And I think in the future, like for our case, or at least what we try to do, is to work with equivalents for the urban pluvial or 2D inundation, but also the impact area. And this is really, yeah, of course, not an easy thing, but I think to at least work on some standardization of this benchmarking for those kind of models, this will really help in building trust in those kind of models. And yeah, of course, as you also said, this research to operation cycle, it really collapsed from 5 to 10 years to now 12 to maybe 12 months to 2 years, but also while using co-production. So I think that's really good to have an impact, but it makes it, there's also a danger. So if you do silly validation, or if you don't review or your practices don't adapt, then yeah, this also comes with some downsides, the increased speed. So I think yeah, in 5 years, the bottleneck by far won't be the accuracy or the compute of the models. I'm sure that also with the tools evaluating every day the code quality and also the model quality, they will improve so fast, but the trust in the will be the key. So how do you represent uncertainty? How do you validate? And yeah, also work with benchmarks we haven't built yet in this sector.
Thank you. Gunula, perhaps from your side, from Flood Adapt, are you using AI technologies already?
No, we're not using yet. Where we also see potential, I mean, Gregor obviously showed a pretty powerful example of how to use AI in such systems. Where I also see potential is in it's not just about giving the users the tools. They want to answer questions with these tools. So, for example, for the long-term planning, there might be some guidance or needed or helping users to navigate what kind of scenarios are relevant for this decision-making context. What are these high impact, low probability events that scientists are talking about, and should I do something with it in my decision-making context? It's perhaps also making the connection of tools like like Floodwave or Flood Adapt with these data providers like the service that C3S provides. Can AI help there to make that link a little easier and more straightforward? And on the other end of our modeling workflow, there might be different stakeholders that are interacting with the service. So data might need to be presented in different ways, and I can also see a potential there for Gen AI.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, Spyros,
Yeah.
3CS and AI, and or how would you envisage the 3CS water service developing? I think ECMWF is also using AI technology already in some sense, but yeah.
Yeah, it is being used by CMWF, not in the current contract that we are having, but just to give you an overview, also thinking about the future. It could become a very valuable addition, AI, when it comes to water resources modeling, but it should work, in my opinion, as a complement, not replacement of the process-based understanding that our models give. We know very well AI can extract patterns, identify patterns from large, messy data set. It can very rapidly improve real-time decision making. It can integrate some sources, like, for example, citizen observation that could come through means of co-production. However, there are also limitations in that. One key limitation, I don't want to go into many, you know very well. One key limitation is you also mentioned the word trust. Towards the end users, how trustworthy the results are when they come from predictive modeling. So, in my opinion, in the future would look like promising, where it integrates, let's say, best of both worlds, both AI, but also process-based physical modeling. And most importantly, also domain expertise, especially when we discuss about co-production and user engagement, then that should also be at the core in order to still be a robust service and is trustworthy by decision makers.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. So AI and public procurement, Tonya, is this a topic or
Absolutely. During the workshops that I mentioned that we ran with the end users, in every single workshop, they brought up AI, unprompted, actually. There was a lot of hope and expectation placed on AI. Essentially, what the end users were hoping to get out of PCP-Wise was almost like a kind of chatbot that they could ask what's the flood risk in this street in the city that I have to give climate adaptation plans to in 2035? And then the AI would give them exactly the right result packaged in a report that they can send to their supervisor, and their job would be a lot easier. So definitely on the data interpretation side, there was huge hope placed in AI, because many people that attended the workshops said, well, I already know where I can find the data. My issue is that I don't understand the data. So explaining and interpreting the data sets that are available to the end users is really the main, as I said, hope that they placed in AI in the interactions we had with them. So this is also something that we have tried to include a little bit in the tender specifications. Of course, at the same time, you have to be careful. I think it is exactly what was said already, on the element of trust and also on the element of accountability. If a decision is made based on a recommendation made by an AI, who at the end of the day is accountable for that decision if it turns out to have been the wrong one in terms of even insurance? So that is something that no one had a good answer to during those workshops. I think most public authorities in Europe, probably around the world, are asking themselves those exact questions right now, because they all see the power of AI, but then who is responsible at the end of the day? I also think that the whole issue around then being, in a way, dependent on large US-based companies was something that came up, especially in the Eastern European contexts where we were visiting. There was a lot of worry around the security of the data, around sabotage. And so I think the idea of inviting a kind of foreign AI into your systems that suddenly has access to everything, for some also sounded quite dystopian and dangerous. I think what they would love to see is a kind of homegrown European AI model that could then be integrated with whatever solutions they are already using, to help them explain what is there. So whether they are looking at C3S or whatever else is out there that they already have access to, if they had a kind of chatbot that could plug into that and tell them exactly, and I think, Spiros, you said it, this finding patterns in large data sets. Most of them have access to precipitation data, going back 50, 100 years or something for the regions that they're responsible for. But they're never going to comb through all of that. So just having something there to help them make sense of this data, make it understandable, interpretable, and explain it to them in somewhat more easy language, and ideally package it in a report ready to send off to the boss. That is really that was the goal for them.